Hey, also, we are starting a round of gut reset. And so I went shopping today for everything that I need to start our new round of gut reset. And so I want to show you the grocery haul and how we are getting started with it. So when we are doing a gut reset, we start out very restricted, very simple, and then we slowly expand from there. So the first month is the most restricted, and even honestly the first week or two of that is going to be the most restricted. It really depends on the person, how flexible you can be earlier on. It depends on the level of illness you're coming with to the gut reset, but we are just doing it all and starting just from scratch. And so we have even kept some things out that sometimes I will keep in for some clients depending on their situation, but this is the most bare bones, basic way to start the gut reset. So it's a very specific list of vegetables, and there's a lot of reasons for the specific vegetables that I include in this very first stage of the gut reset. I'm not going to be able to get into all of the reasons for these vegetables being included and not others, but I will give a little bit about it. And then any kind of meat is allowed, but everything is going to be in soup, right? So there are some things that just don't do well in soups, right? So for example, if you had like uncured bacon, like sliced side pork, that would technically be okay, but that's gonna taste really weird in a soup. Or something like ground beef also, like technically should be okay, but just would be really weird in a soup. So mostly we're going to be using things like shanks, like cross-cut shanks, roasts, especially bone-in roasts, whole chickens, seafood, things like that. So how I've started us out, actually, I have some oxtail and some cross-cut shanks starting in the pot right now. And those have the bones in it. So it's really important to have some kind of meat that you're cooking in your soup that has the muscle attached to the bone, because those tendons are going to be really collagen rich and really important and nourishing for the gut lining to repair. But you can also just do like roasts, meat roasts. Like this is a pork shoulder roast that has no bone in it. What I like to do is I always like to include, I left it over here, some kind of bone that you would usually use for like bone broth or something like that. Some kind of bone that has a lot of the tendons still attached and some of the marrow still in it. So this is like a knee joint that's just like being sold cheap as a soup bone. So I'll put these in together to get both properties. But the key is that you want to do the soup, the meat stock for the soup, you want to do it really short cook time. The problem is not so much even the types of meat or bones that you're using, but how long it's being cooked. So traditional bone broth is cooked for usually 12 to 24 hours, and that gives a very particular amino acid profile when you cook the bones for that long. And that can actually be a little irritating on the gut lining when you're doing this very basic gut reset. That's better for maintaining health once you're already reached a healthy state. So the short cooked meat stock is best for when you're doing those early stages of gut reset. So I'll only be cooking this for a couple of hours, right? No more than 5. That would be like the longest you would want to cook soup for a gut reset. If you have histamine issues, you want to do it for way less, maybe like an hour at the most. Just to make sure the meat's fully cooked, and that's it. So yeah, I have oxtail and crosscut shanks cooking right now that I'll just boil in filtered water for a couple of hours. And then the next time I make soup, I will be using this pork roast and some knee joint bones, soup bones, included with it. So that's some of the meat haul that I have. I also have a whole chicken in the fridge. And what else? And I also have a chuck roast that I will also cook with some extra bones. And so that gives me a variety of chicken, pork, beef, which is just kind of nice. But if you do better with just one type of meat, it's totally fine to just do that. And I have also added to the soups, the broth that's cooking, some fresh herbs. So I like to stay away from anything dried in the first stage, just because the dried texture can not only be a little bit of a histamine trigger, but it can also just be a little more irritating to the gut lining. So I like to include fresh herbs that I cook in the soup. So this is rosemary. I actually picked this out of my garden. I didn't get it from the store, but you can get fresh herbs from the store. And then we also want to do unrefined salt. Oh, that's over here. So, I got Redmond's Real Salt. It had been a while since I've eaten this brand of salt. You just want to make sure it says unrefined so that it hasn't gone through industrial refining process where all the trace minerals are pulled out. We want all those trace minerals. It's going to be really good for you, so that's going to be poured into the stock as well as it's cooking. And then, here's the veggies that I got. So I got onion and garlic. These are great. They're really, really good for the immune system, and they just make everything taste so awesome. So really good for the immune system. Make the soup taste good. I also got beets. Now, beets are not going to be appropriate if you know you have really bad oxalate toxicity. I'm not going to go into that in this video, but even though they have a lot of oxalates in them, they also have a lot of really good properties in terms of the liver. They're really cleansing to the liver. They naturally have a lot of glutathione in it. They're really good for stimulating the whole bile system in the liver, and really good to support detoxification, which is a huge thing that happens in this first stage. So even though they're high in oxalate, they have a lot of really beneficial properties, and so if you are okay with some moderate levels. Everything else in this first stage is very low oxalate, so if you can tolerate some oxalates in the diet, they're great to include, at least in moderation, and make a really yummy, rich red soup. I also have leeks, which are kind of also medium high in oxalate, so you just want to be aware, but usually people aren't eating a ton of these, so usually it's okay, and it gives a nice alternative flavor to the garlic and onion. I include a lot of broccoli. Broccoli is very low in plant toxins, and it also has a lot of soluble fiber in it, which is really good for detoxifying those fat-soluble toxins, and so I include a lot of broccoli in my protocol. Now you can also do cauliflower. It's actually not my favorite tasting vegetable, so I haven't included it personally, but you can also do cauliflower. And then carrots. And carrots also are very, very high in soluble fiber, which is that type of fiber that binds to toxins. It doesn't feed bacteria, it just binds to toxins, so these are great to include as well. Now, none of these vegetables are like required, right? None of these will make and break the experience for you. So if you don't tolerate any of those, you know, some of those are high FODMAPs, they might be make people bloaty or gassy. Don't include them if they make you bloaty or gassy, or if for some reason you have some kind of a reaction to one of those foods, just don't include them. It's totally fine. And I really pare down on the amount of vegetables you do in this first stage because I really don't want them to be leafy or fibrous at all, which can be irritating to the gut lining. I want them to be able to be cooked down to something very soft, which these vegetables do really well. And I want them to be low toxin as possible, right? And these are some of the lowest toxin vegetables with the exception of beets, which does have the oxalates, but again, has all those other benefits. So I kind of weigh that as being worth it for most people. I have, like I said, I excluded all vegetables that are more leafy or fibrous that could be irritating for the gut lining. And I've also excluded any vegetables that have any starch in it, right? Any of the resistant starch that can feed bacteria because we're trying to do a bacterial purge, right, in this first stage. And then I've also excluded other plants that are really high in oxalates, that don't have a lot of other benefits to them, and plants that are high in lectins, right, which can be very irritating to the gut lining, especially when you're trying to heal. Really irritating to the nervous system and immune system until you are healthy. So traditionally, GAPS will often include things like squash, and I've taken those out because of the lectin content, but they can be put back in later on once you're feeling better. Oh, one last thing. I did include mushrooms as well. And now some people say if you have autoimmunity, you have to be careful with mushrooms because they're so stimulating to the immune system, but I actually find for most people they're more modulating for the immune system, right? They actually kind of even the immune system out rather than stimulate them. So I have included shiitake mushrooms. You can also do maitake. The Asian mushrooms are going to be the most therapeutic, but you know, if you feel like it flares you or is a trigger for you, don't include them. But if you can tolerate them, really, really beneficial to include some mushrooms in your soup as well. So that's pretty much it. Keeping it really simple. It's okay to eat the same foods over and over again. And actually that's part of the reason I have pared the list down to be so small, is that when your nervous system is trying to heal, when your immune system is trying to heal, it really does well with simplicity and knowing what to expect. And so I actually don't find it very beneficial. You know, some people will say, have as diverse a diet as you can possibly have. And sure, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that either, but I find that when people are healing, it's actually better to kind of eat the same thing every day and just allow your body to know what to expect. And to just simplify, right? Like the same thing every day is actually very, very therapeutic. Couple last things. There are some kind of more therapeutic foods that can be really beneficial for digestion, because your digestion is going to need a lot of support with this, because it's going to be busy healing and doing other things, and a lot of times people are transitioning from a very different type of diet, and so the amount of fat included in this protocol is sometimes a little bit overwhelming for some people's digestive systems. So there are some supportive things that can be really beneficial. We actually wait on the fermented foods. We want to do kind of a purge before we introduce fermented foods, so we leave that out for now. But what we also do is lemon juice and apple cider vinegar. So lemon juice and apple cider vinegar are both really acidic, which is really good for creating a really acidic stomach environment. And you know, a lot of people are afraid of acidic foods because they think that it triggers the acid reflux, and it can on the surface if you're also eating things that are causing the acid reflux in the first place, right? But these actually stimulate stomach acid in a really healthy way, because we need high levels of stomach acid to digest food properly, and so using these very therapeutic acidic foods in warm water first thing in the morning before you eat anything can be really, really good, making sure you're digesting really well for the rest of the day. So I include those. They are histamine triggers, so just leave those out if you have histamine issues. You can also do coffee, black coffee. Stevia is actually okay in small amounts on the first stage of the diet if you tolerate it, and if you feel like you really can't handle black coffee but you really want it. You can do a small amount of stevia in your coffee even from the beginning of this protocol. Stevia is actually a traditional food, so that's okay, but just moderate the coffee use because you can't have your body in a stress state to heal, right? So just 1 or 2 cups a day. You can do that. You can also do herbal teas. You're not eating, right, the dried herbs when you're doing an herbal tea, and so it's not irritating to the gut, and that can actually be really nice and beneficial. Plants have so many wonderful therapeutic properties, so including that can be really nice. Especially, I like to cut up actually fresh ginger and boil that and drink that. That can also be very stimulating for the digestive system, which is really good. Okay, so that's my little guide on my grocery haul and getting started with a gut reset.